Stuart. I appreciate that introduction. And thank you, Caitlin. I did print out my notes. Hopefully I won't need them. In the interest of calling out the equivalent of typos, Stuart, we're 45 years old, and not 100, but hopefully we will get to 100, but thank you for... But we are a storied, iconic brand at Timberland. I'm proud to work for the company. You know, I'm one of those people who's passionate about sustainability and the outdoors, and that's what drew me to Timberland, and the opportunity to go and work for our previous president, Jeff Swartz, who was, if any of you have ever had the opportunity to hear him speak or meet him, he was a pioneer in the notion of companies doing well and doing good. And I make it sound like he's a really old guy. I think he's only like 58 years old. So as a pioneer, though, he was a third generation leader of our company. And I had the opportunity to work side by side with him for a couple years to initiate the project that I'm going to share with you today. I want to just point out the amazing accomplishment of turning 5 years old in this industry. I've worked on cross-industry organizations as a representative of Timberland, and they can be some of the most powerful convenings of people, you know, in an industry to share ideas. And the key thing is, what I would challenge you with, and this is based on my own personal learnings, is you have, in my mind, an incredible opportunity, and now by virtue of you taking time out of your companies, you know, your days and running your companies to come here, you to me are now accountable to go back to your offices on Monday and not just catch up on your emails, but take the energy that you're going to leave here with and think about how you can cascade it down into the ranks of your organization and empower people in your organizations to help carry the mantle around sustainability. It's one of the biggest challenges we have because we get so cemented in with our day-to-days once we get back into the environments of our desks. So I would just like to respectfully issue that challenge for you as an opportunity once you leave here and share the ideas around your organization and empower your people to think in the same vein. So enough about that. I want to share with you today a story about Timberland's journey in tree planting, and what started out as a pure marketing promotion and as a vehicle to engage our consumers in our values proposition as a brand and of doing well and doing good. We were a publicly traded company when I started in 2006, and our board of directors was constantly saying, how do we get credit from the consumer for all this good stuff that we do? And that was a challenge that I accepted when I accepted the role to run values marketing in 2007. Okay, there we go, sorry. So for those of you that don't know, Timberland is a lifestyle brand that we're a manufacturer, retailer, and wholesaler of footwear, apparel, and gear for people who have an outdoor lifestyle mindset. We have about 7,000 employees globally. We did about $1.8 million in sales last year. And we have about 256 retail stores around the world, which present us with a great opportunity to tell our story to the consumer in a brick and mortar setting. And we also have e-com businesses and sites in about 20 different markets around the world that we manage through our global brand marketing and our regional marketing teams. And we have a staunch corporate social responsibility platform that was in place when I went to work. As I said, that's one of the reasons I wanted to go work for the company. And it still exists today. In 2011, we were acquired by VF Corporation, who just 2 weeks ago announced they're moving their headquarters from Greensboro, North Carolina to Denver. So I'll be coming here a lot more frequently, yes. I'm more excited about Denver than I am about Greensboro, I can tell you that. I mean, I'd like North Carolina, and I hope they've got some challenges ahead, but I'm excited about Denver. So VF Corp owns the North Face, Vans, Reef, Eagle Creek. They own a lot of really great outdoor brands. And they also own Wrangler and Lee. For a little while longer. They've also announced that they're going to spin those brands off, their jeanswear brands off, into a new publicly traded company. They'll still be in the family, but once removed, so to speak. So we were acquired by this big corporation, and one of the reasons they said they acquired us was because of our values play. We were a strong business proposition. We're a healthy, iconic brand. We're a global brand that was well established. We represent an opportunity for them to increase their profitability, obviously, but we also had this ethos of a brand that they hoped we could share and spread to their other brands in the portfolio. So that was a mandate that was issued to us, and I'm happy to say that that's been a success as we move forward from the transition. Today, our CSR pillar operates under under three primary, our CSR platform operates under three pillars. We've strived to make responsible product. We strive to protect the outdoors, because if there were no outdoors, we wouldn't have a reason to be in business. And we also serve the communities that we work and live in around the world. Every full-time Timberland employee actually gets 40 hours of paid community service every year. Matter of fact, today is Timberland's company-sponsored employee service day, global employee service day called Servapalooza. So I've got to make up my hours somehow, but in the meantime, we've got employees around the world serving in the communities today, and it's a pretty exciting proposition. So our logo is a tree, and we feel as though that gives us a strong license to use tree planting as a mechanism to engage consumers in our values proposition. And it also, trees are universally accepted. Nobody's against the idea of planting a tree anywhere around the world. At least there are very few people that are. And the thing about trees for us is the health benefits of cleaning the air, stopping erosion, helping to mitigate flooding. They provide food for us, and all the things that trees do in general. It helps the overall health of the agricultural efforts around the world, particularly for smallholder farmers, who are one of the largest populations around the world, but they're also one of the most marginalized populations. So for us, trees are very, very important. We also know we are a brand that was adopted by the urban consumer, and trees have a very valuable urban component in that urban communities that have trees, that research has found that trees help people that live in urban environments when they're exposed to them, to how their blood pressure goes down and their stress levels go down. And there's also research that shows that just looking at a picture of trees does that. So hopefully that's happened to you in the last couple of minutes. My blood pressure is up right now because I'm up on the stage, but So in 2008, I transitioned into a role in April to run values marketing for Timberland's global brand marketing team. I was a brand manager for another brand that Timberland had cultivated in their invention factory the previous 2 years. So I moved over into what we call the tree. And internally, lovingly, we call it the tree. And as I said, our board of directors wanted us to get credit for the things that we do amongst the consumer. And so we said, well, how are we going to do that? And we asked our agencies, and they said, well, there's a really cool thing happening right now out in the world. It's called social media. And there's this thing called Facebook. And it used to be on college campuses, but it's come off the campuses, and it's in the mainstream, and brands can start to play in it. And this would be a great opportunity to promote your message. And so we could do this really cool thing. We could build an app, and I don't know if you remember all the way back 10 years ago when Facebook came off the college campuses, there were apps. Farmville, maybe you remember that. So the whole idea was we created a virtual forest in an app in Facebook, and we invited people to plant trees or plant seeds, and on their Facebook feed, their friends would see it, and their friends would be invited to water those seeds. And as everybody watered a seed, it turned into a seedling, and then a sapling, and then a full-grown tree. And for every full-grown tree that grew in our virtual forest, we promised to plant a real tree in the real world. And that became a mechanism for us to enter a conversation to inform consumers around our tree planting proposition. We were planting trees around the world through donation-based programs and partnerships with NGOs. And so we had different programs that we could share depending on where you were located around the world. Now the thing about this Facebook thing, our goal was to get to 500,000 trees, virtual trees, and we thought it would probably take about a year. Nobody knew. We were pioneering in this space, and it sounds weird to say that in 2008, but with the retrospective that we have, we just didn't know if it would work. And in total transparency, I actually inherited this program because it was already kind of in play when I assumed the role in April. So we launched it on Earth Day in April. And people start planting seeds and stuff, and they're clicking, they're doing their part, they're just clicking, and trees are growing, and all of a sudden, by the 1st of August, we had 350,000 trees planted. And I thought, holy smokes, this isn't gonna take long. So I called my predecessor, the gentleman that was previously in charge of values marketing, Jay, and Kamel and I worked together at Timberland, and she knows Jay. And I said, hey Jay, who did you arrange to get these trees planted in real life? Because these Facebook people, these crazy virtual tree planters, are asking us where we're going to plant the trees. And he said, I actually haven't contacted anybody yet. I didn't think the thing was going to work. And I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. Wow. Not only am I learning about Facebook at warp speed, now I've got to do a little bit of, and when you're in social media, we had to come clean. So we went with our hat in our hand, and we got screamed at, and we got called a fraud. And Jeff Swartz, being the brilliant guy that he is, he said, you know what, let them call us whatever they want. Let's get a conference call together and invite them to come and talk to us, and let's see if they can tell us where we should plant the trees. We had 50 people join a conference call, 50 of these virtual tree planters joined this conference call with Jeff, our CEO, and they actually told us, they gave us a lot of different ideas. We had a great dialogue. We were honest and open about the social media things new to us, and we're learning a lesson here, and we appreciate the fact that you're graciously teaching it to us, regardless of the language you're using online. So where do you think we should plant the trees? And one of the members introduced us to a program in Nepal that would basically, they needed trees planted so they could restore the environment to protect endangered species of tigers. And so we contacted the NGO, we vetted the program, and we were able to make an arrangement with the NGO to get the trees planted, to get 500,000 trees planted. And it was a great win for us, and everybody was happy, and they went back to pushing the button and planting their virtual trees, and we got to 500,000 trees, and then we shut the thing down, and then they yelled at us again. But in the meantime, we were trying to build the storytelling mechanism to tell this story to consumers in our stores around the world. And the NGO said, oh, you can't do that unless you sign a licensing agreement with us. And you don't just need one, you need one for every country in which you want to tell the story. And here's the cost for that. And it was triple what it costs to get the trees planted in the ground. So the first lesson, I'm going to share a couple lessons with you, but the first lesson I have is ask the right questions. We didn't know to ask that question. They weren't incredibly forthcoming and transparent in our initial conversations with them about the next step beyond getting the trees planted and our ability to tell the story. But it taught us to think more comprehensively when we engage in these types of programs with these types of partnerships. And that was an important lesson for us. And I will say now that I've had multiple conversations with this particular NGO, I've formed great relationships with them through organizations like this and convenings of people in cross industries at events like this. And I've had good discussions about, hey, would you ever think about rethinking your licensing structure? Because we have a great deal of respect for your brand. It's a highly recognized brand. They might have been here last year. And we have a great deal of respect for it. We understand your inclination to protect it. But also, we have an important big brand too, and we wield a lot of influence with our consumers, and we could actually open the door for you in a powerful way if you could just make it a little bit more affordable for us to do that in the vein of partnership. And they've since changed the way that they view and structure those types of relationships. So it ended up being a good, fruitful relationship in the long run, and we've done some things with them since, less costly. So moving forward to 2009, we decided we're going to go to Haiti and plant trees. And the reason we wanted to go to Haiti is about a third of that 7,000 global workforce that we have works in the Dominican Republic on the Isle of Hispaniola, the island which is shared by Haiti and the DR. And we have a factory in the DR that's been open since the early 70s. We have the third generation of workers are working there. People whose grandparents and parents worked at our factory are now working there. So it's a really successful program for us. And we do a lot of work there in the DR. But the thing about Haiti is there's a clear demarcation when you fly over the two countries in the border. Haiti's 2% forested. So there is a great need for tree cover, and the reason for that is the number one source of energy is wood and charcoal. So trees are worth more dead than alive in Haiti right now. And so we felt the need to figure out, could we work with some people on the ground there to develop a tree planting program that would change the paradigm to have trees be more valuable alive than dead. So in 2009, I went to Haiti, and we found the places where we were going to set up a network of tree nurseries. That was the basis for our program there that we were going to launch in 2010. And then on January 12th, 2010, the earthquake happened. And that was a sobering moment for everybody. There wasn't anything that anything else we could think about those first couple weeks in January. It was painful. This person was buried in the rubble for a couple days, found her way to the hospital in Port-au-Prince and was pleading for help, and they couldn't help her because they didn't have an x-ray machine that was operating properly. And so, we were asking ourselves in the office, would it be viable for us to just kind of put the tree program aside and take those funds and put them towards short-term recovery and relief efforts in Haiti? And we thought long and hard, and we were able, through Jeff Swartz's influence, we were able to get a couple airplanes filled with supplies and food, and we sent teams down there to help with the recovery efforts. And we engaged consumers in our stores to donate through the Red Cross globally. So we had some good efforts going on. But ultimately, when we had the long, hard conversations about what are we going to do with this investment, which was in marketing funds, by the way, so they're always vulnerable, as we all know, because you can put them aside and you can make commitments, but when you got to make cuts in your budgets, that's one of the first places we look, unfortunately. And so we decided, though, ultimately, through some really, really deep conversations, that we would stay the course. We realized that if we could build this network of tree nurseries in Haiti and have the right model around the operation of them, and in 5 years have a sustainable business that didn't require private sector donations and support to run them, if we could basically build a business in 5 years around the premise of tree nurseries, that would go a lot farther in the long term of helping Haiti than any short-term effort, recovery efforts, or the funds could go to help in the short term. And there was no shortage of funds going into Haiti for recovery. So we felt as though that was a sound decision. And I'm very, very grateful myself that we did make that decision. So we made a promise in April of 2009 or 10 that we would plant 5 million trees in 5 years. And it was the starting line. And we enlisted 2 organizations, Yele Haiti and Trees for the Future. Yele Haiti is the former nonprofit organization run by Wyclef Jean, a Haitian from the Fugees, a hip hop artist who was a big Timberland fan. So we were trying to leverage that consumer segment of our consumer audience. And Trees for the Future is a Washington D.C. based NGO that was run by a family. And they had a very strong reputation, and they had a good infrastructure in Haiti, and they had a rock star guy that was working in Haiti for them named Timothée Georges, who was 27 years old, Haitian agronomist. He went to Costa Rica and got educated in agronomy, and it was always his mission since he was in high school to become an agronomist and come back and help smallholder farmers in Haiti. So a lot of Haitians leave, and they don't come back. And Timothée, it was never a question whether or not he was going to come back. And so we were very, very lucky to have Timothée, and then the president of Yele Haiti, Hugh Locke, who also has an agroforestry background and tree planting background, and is very passionate about that. They both were the 2 representatives from those 2 organizations that were leading our project for us. So their whole idea was, we're going to build tree nurseries with your money over the next 5 years. They're going to output 1 million trees a year. And we're going to pay farmers to come and work in the nursery and plant the trees. And we said, wait a second, what are we paying farmers for? What happens when our money runs out? And I had conversations, this is the 3 of us in Haiti, and we had these conversations about how, an NGO says basically their answer is, we'll just get another donor to come in right behind you and take care of it. And we said, that's not a sustainable business. Like that, what if there are no donors? Now you've got people who are depending on you, and you can't support the proposition, so it's going to be a short-lived effort. And we don't want to be writing you checks year after year after year without having something to show for it, quite frankly. And so we said, you need to rethink the model. And so the next lesson was push boundaries. Push boundaries with your partners. Typical NGO models, with all due respect to them, they're donor-based, and donors are important without a doubt. We're not questioning that. It's just the point that what are we doing with the funds, and what can we build with those funds now, and how can we take the long-term approach to build something? Maybe we spend a little bit more at the outset to build an infrastructure that can get us to truly a sustainable business that's run by the stakeholders on the ground or the citizens on the ground. And so Hugh and Timothée will tell you that it wasn't easy for them to rethink the paradigm around, because they were so ingrained in donor-based NGO operations. But they basically took the approach of, what do the farmers need most? What do the farmers in Haiti, what's causing them to be rooted in the cycle of poverty? And it's basically the fact that they need non-genetically modified seeds for their crops. They need access to those. They need tools, literally hand tools. They need access to those. They can't afford them. And they need access to trees, because if we can be, and they need training. And the whole idea of access to trees is, if they can learn how to plant the trees around their smallholder farms, which are 5 acres or less, then they'll start to, there's 3 things that are happening. They create living fences for their properties, and there's boundary issues in Haiti with land ownership, so we can have a clear demarcation. They can restore biodiversity and nutrients in the soil, because trees do that, and they do it quickly. They can also have new crops available, because trees produce things like mangoes or moringa, and you can sell those things to make money. And they can have just general lower stress level, because ideally, if all this works, they put the training, the tools, the seeds, and the trees, everything all together in one package, then their stress level will go down, because their incomes are going up, because their crop yields are going up. So that's basically what we did. we developed a model whereby we built these tree nurseries. We asked local farmers to come and work with us to help get the trees planted for free. And in return for their time, we would give them tools, training, and trees. And we would give them access to the ability to put all those things together in their own properties. And it was very, very well received right out of the gates. By August, we had farmers from villages all over coming and asking us, could we set up tree nurseries in their villages? And eventually, farmers were asking us if in addition to the agricultural services, could we also introduce community services? Could we have some literacy training? Could we have business training? Could we have micro-lending? Could we have health services? Cholera, the epidemic of cholera was happening at this time, and they needed access to education about how to treat cholera and how to avoid it. And so we were able to set up workshops at the nurseries to teach the farmers how to do this. And so all of the ask of the community services we were exploring in August, and everything was churning. We were feeling good about, wow, we're onto something here. We're only a few months in. But then, of course, it can't be that easy. Wyclef Jean announces he's going to run for president, and his Yele Haiti organization gets raked over the coals, and they get called to the carpet for financial improprieties. And we've got their president, who's one of our main people on the ground, running this thing. And I've got people at Timberland asking me, can we trust this guy? Like, what's going on? What's happening? And I can tell you that this was one of the toughest decisions I've ever had to make, because I was really the only person engaged on a day-to-day basis at Timberland in this project. And we had a lot of support for it, but I was the person that was responsible to run it. And so I trusted Hugh to the nth degree. I'd spent a lot of time with him in the field, and I'd been in meetings with him in New York City, and I knew what was going on at Yele. I knew that it wasn't the ideal scenario with regards to how the money was being spent, but those necessarily weren't always his choices. But he didn't have the opportunity to share it, to control the narrative of what was happening in the news. And so we knew that this was probably going to be the downfall of Yele Haiti. So we just said, Hugh, why don't you just leave it all behind? You're destined for more than running a hip hop stars charity. Why don't you the farmers are asking for social services as well as agricultural services. They're basically asking us to build them a co-op, a farmers co-op in Haiti. Why don't you and Timote run that for us? Set it up and run it. We'll give you access to our business leaders back at Timberland to help you set up the financial aspects, the supply chain aspects. We'll give you access to all of that. Remember, our employees can use their 40 hours of community service to support these types of organizations. And so he did. We basically said, we're going to have conviction around our project and the people that we support, and we're going to believe in them. And sometimes you just have to trust your gut. And we did. And so Hugh left Yele behind. Yele ended up going away. And he and Timote founded the organization that we now know as the Smallholder Farmers Alliance. So it was a pretty powerful, significant happening in the history of our story. So around 2015, we had 5 million trees planted in the ground. And everything was really cool. Organic farming practices were in play. We had farmers who were believing in what we were doing, and we were incredibly successful. That's me in the circle. This is a forest that was built in 5 years in Haiti. This was if you look beyond it, you can see, it's kind of hard in the light here, but you can see that that's a bare area up at the top. That's what this place looked like before we planted these trees there. And the interesting thing about this is this has become the impetus to be the beginning of a green belt in the Gonaïves region of Antimartin in Haiti. And so we were very proud of this picture, because I didn't realize the impact of it until I actually saw the photos after I got back from the trip. How vast that this little forest. I mean, it is a little forest in the grand scheme of things, but it's a start. And we. I'll tell you about it in a second, but we did a documentary film, and we interviewed a woman who lives near here, and she and the residents of the town, they won't let people cut the trees down, because they understand the value of they're less flooding. Their rivers the rivers have water and they're not overflowing. And so there's just a lot of benefits that people are realizing right away. And so this is one of my favorite pictures from one of my trips to Haiti, of many trips. So we've got 3,000 farms involved in the Smallholder Farmers Alliance, 6,000 farmers, and that's That's a situation where most smallholder farms in Haiti are run by husband and wife teams, but they play different roles and they contribute different ways, and so we treat them differently. And if you've ever been involved in any emerging market or developing nation conferences, they talk about the role of the woman versus the role of the man. And so we treat the women as individual farmers. They're not subservient to their husbands, or they're not lesser than, and in many ways, arguably, they're the lead. They're holding the purse strings and they're managing the finances. And so, you know, why shouldn't it be like it is in the U.S., right? So they're the success behind the man. So we've got 6,000 farmers. Now we have 30 tree nurseries and in 5 different locations throughout Haiti. So we've got a project that, you know, it's built to scale across the country. This is Gustave and Rosemary. They have 7 children. They are members of the Smallholder Farmers Alliance. And they grow onions, eggplants, and mangoes. And they, prior to their involvement in the Smallholder Farmers Alliance, they couldn't send any of their kids to school. There is no free education in Haiti. There's no government support for free education because the government's so fractured. And so you have to pay to send your kids to school, and if you can't afford it, they don't go. And once that they became involved in the Smallholder Farmers Alliance, they were some of his crop yields increased by up to 70% depending on the crop. Therefore, his incomes went up, and now all 7 of his kids have either gone on and finished school or they're in school. So really, really cool story, and he's a great guy. I mean, he just, every time I see him, and I get to see him about once every 18 months now, but I saw him more frequently previously, he just has a big smile on his face, and he's just the happiest guy in the world, and it just makes my heart melt. Like I said before, these are organic crops, which is important, obviously, for the sustained health of the land, and also for the sustained health of the people. And the average crop yield is 40% across the board of our outputs for the SFA, and incomes have increased 50 to 100%, and we've put more than 3,400 kids in school. So how did we get people involved? So that's what happened on the ground in Haiti, but we had to tell our story. And so we started from day one chronicling the story. We sent a film crew down with the idea that we didn't know what was going to happen, much like that Facebook thing. We didn't know if it was going to work. But we thought, no matter what happens at the other end of this, we're going to have a cool story to tell. It's either going to be a really big learning story, or it's going to be a big success story, or a little bit of both. But let's chronicle it to see what happens. And let's also use these stories along the way, along the 5-year journey, use the videos to be able to educate our executives, because as you guys all know, some of you may be executives, you know, we only have so much time to consume information about our own companies, about our departments, and with the short attention span today, I would say with the proliferation of social media and everything else, it's just hard to issue a report. I get quarterly reports. I would get them from the partner, from Hugh and Timote, and they'd say survival rates and species of trees and watch-outs and, you know, issues that we're having on the ground that we need to be addressed. But nobody reads that stuff. I mean, I was the only one that was reading them, and I'd have to try to summarize them in slides, and nobody would read them. And so we started using the videos as a way to tell the story of what was happening, and we would share the videos in town halls at Timberland and get our teams involved and engaged in what was going on. And then they started to invest, and they wanted to know what was happening next. And so it was a really unique way for us to be able to tell the story. And we developed a documentary film at the end that we unveiled in 2016 called Combi the Cooperative. And you can, if you go on YouTube and just search Combi the Cooperative, you can see the film. It's 45 minutes long, and it does a really great job of telling the story in a very rich way. And if you don't have tears in your eyes at the end of the film, I'll wonder what's wrong with you. So the thing about the Combi, the word Combi means work party in Haiti, in Creole. And basically, that's what we do. That's what happens at the nurseries. When we harvest, when we plant, and when we harvest, in both of those seasons, we have big work parties. People come together as a community, and we get the trees, the seeds planted in the ground, and then we get the trees planted in the ground, you know, in the countryside. So that's how that happens at scale. And I've been a part of one, and it's pretty amazing. And it's just like the best service event ever to be a part of. So tell your story is the next lesson, and that's kind of a no-brainer, right? But the key is, how do you tell it? And so you've got to figure out what mediums work best for you. In our case, we took those video packaging, we called them dispatches from Haiti, and we would put them in our emails, links in our emails to our consumers, our customers on our e-com sites. We'd put them on our website. We put them in social media. And then, like I said, we'd share them with internal audiences. We shared them at conferences like this. And so we wanted to keep people apprised all along the way. And we even use them for submissions to awards ceremonies and things like that in the sustainability world. So at one point, when we realized this thing was being really successful, we realized that at Timberland, we didn't have any stake in it from a supply chain perspective. There were no materials, no plants that the farmers were putting out that we use in our supply chain. But they needed, because it was so successful, the yields were increased and all the cooperative created more outputs collectively, we needed to find customers. We needed to use our influence as a recognized company to talk to friends in other industries that do use their outputs in the supply chain. And so we created some relationships for folks. We connected them and we convened them to talk about, could you become a customer of the smallholder farmers? And this is Cooley is energy. It's an organization out of California. They deal specifically in Moringa. Moringa is a tree that's grown in Haiti, and it's a superfood. And Moringa basically, they make powder. You can add it to your tea. Doesn't have the cachet of kale yet, but hopefully someday soon it will. And they developed this energy shot product, and Whole Foods bought it for national distribution. And the Moringa that goes into the Cooley energy shots that you can buy today at Whole Foods comes from Smallholder Farmers Alliance farmers. So that was one of the markets that we were able to introduce and facilitate as a convener, as our role as a convener at Timberland. And that's something we're very, very proud of. We also have lime outputs. There's lime trees and groves that are growing using the agroforestry principles. A vetiver for the perfume market, the fragrance market, and the next one, we started to think, okay, what is something that we could introduce? What could we get the farmers to start growing that we use? And cotton was what came to mind. And the thing about cotton is VF Corporation buys 1% of the world's cotton, which doesn't maybe sound like a lot, but it is. And when we started thinking about cotton, we had to reimagine what was possible, because cotton wasn't grown in Haiti until 12 months ago. It hadn't been grown in Haiti since the 80s until 12 months ago. Cotton was the fourth largest export in Haiti up until the 80s, and it stopped simply for government and political reasons because of the embargoes. And so it was a big deal in Haiti, and it was mostly 75% of the cotton grown in Haiti at that time was grown by smallholder farmers. So we undertook a feasibility study in 2016, and we were blown away by the fact that cotton remains a viable opportunity for output in Haiti for growth and cultivation. And so in 2017, 12 months ago actually, in August, we planted the first seeds since the 1980s in cotton. And I love this picture because the first thing Jeff Swartz taught me about doing projects like this is you have to convene government, you need to convene citizens, you need to convene private sector representatives, and you need NGOs. If you get those four groups in a room to talk about building scalable projects and get them all on the same page, you can do incredible things. This picture has farmers, who I consider the local citizen stakeholders. The woman on the left there is my colleague, Atlanta McElraith, who runs this project now at Timberland. The gentleman next to her is from the Ministry of Commerce in Haiti, and then Hugh and Timote, and then two other farmers. And the farmer on the far right there is Remy, and Remy is 89 years old, and that's Remy in a cotton field back in 1956. And to have a guy like Remy, access to him and his knowledge as we reintroduce and rebuild the cotton cultivation initiative in Haiti has been a pretty powerful thing. There's nothing beats like a wealth of experience in this regard, and so we're very, very lucky to have Remy on board with us. In January, the cotton that was planted in August was harvested. It was our first test crop. We put it through the ringer, literally, and as it turns out, it meets and exceeds all of our standards for apparel. And so we have now made a commitment at Timberland, we don't buy cotton. Our mills buy the cotton, but two of our partner mills who have Through conversations we've had over the years, they have a desire to be more sustainable and amp up their game. So through this collaborative effort of supplier and customer, they've agreed to buy cotton directly from the smallholder farmers. And if you look at the cotton buying process, there's about 15 parties that get money from it, and we don't know why. And so by taking those 15 parties out, the farmers get more money because it's being purchased right from the co-op, and we get a better price, Timberland gets a better price, our customer gets a better price. So this is the other thing on the back end of this is how do we make green less expensive or remove the paradigm that green has to be more expensive. And so this is our long-term initiative to try to get to that point. So the scale of this, we plant in 5 years, we anticipate we'll have 17,000 farms and 34,000 farmers involved in the SFA's cotton initiative. And they're still planting trees and they're growing other crops, so they've diversified their endeavors. 15 million pounds of organic cotton and 25 million trees planted. And the thing I should say is we've made a commitment to buy up to one third of our overall cotton supply that we need at Timberland from the smallholder farmers. But in selling cotton to us, they have to agree that they can't sell us any more than 33% of their total output. They need to find other customers. So we're not putting all the cotton in one basket, so to speak. So Patagonia and Vans is one of our sister brands at VF Corp. They've all also signed letters of intent to purchase from the Smallholder Farmers Alliance too, and we've got about 5 other brands right now that are lined up to explore signing letters of intent. So we've got customers. So we're really excited, and we believe our first purchase will be made in 2019, and our first products will be introduced in 2020, spring of 2020. So we started out as a market-driven tree planting project. And we've netted out at a place where we are, it's a business model. We've got our supply chain involved. We've got our parent company, VF Corporation, involved. We've got our partners, our suppliers involved. We've got our employees involved. We've got our product designers now designing for this. We've got our marketing teams working with, and our IT teams working with blockchain technology so we can track the chain of custody of the cotton to be able to tell the story to the consumer so they can go in and scan the tag on the garment and meet Remy, and they can meet Gustav and Rosemary. And so we've got all these really great opportunities to be able to tell the story using technology, and all those initiatives are happening right now as I speak. So we can pull it all together when we come to market in April of 2020. Thank you. I don't remember what this slide represents, so I'm just going to ask for it. I just told you what it represents, and this is consumers going in and tagging or scanning a tag. But you know, Caitlin touched on this a little bit. 5 years ago when you guys started this organization, and 10 years ago when we were entering into this from an apparel and footwear brand, it was like you're leaders in the space, right? And now it's the cost of entry. And so if we're not doing this, somebody else is going to pass us by. And our philosophy at Timberland is we want to lead the way in these initiatives, and we want to get first to market credit as a brand. Of course, we want to be a leader. We want to reinforce our leadership stature, but we don't want to own this stuff proprietarily. That's why we're happy that Patagonia is on board. They're a competitor in many ways, but we want them alongside us on projects like this because that's how we're truly going to build scale. And the importance of building that scale is the power of being able to scale beyond Haiti and around the world. And so that's our philosophy and our point of view. And so just to review, ask the right questions, stay the course, push the boundaries, tell your story, have conviction, reimagine what's possible. Those are the lessons that we've learned over the course of the last 10 years. And we continue to kind of go back to these lessons and make sure that we're practicing them as we preach them to other groups. So 100 million smallholder farmers produce 75% of the world's cotton around the world. There's 500 million smallholder farmers that grow other crops around the world, and there's 2.5 billion people who work on those farms. 2.5 billion people is a large section of our global population that are marginalized. And if you just think about the power of being able to take the story and the model that I just introduced to you and scaling that with other types of crops, rubber, bamboo, you name it, organic crop, then imagine that we could all together have the power to change the world. So that's my story. Thank you. I think I'm supposed to ask, does anybody have any questions? Sure.
When you plant the trees, who owns them?
Chris, hold on just a second.
Who owns the trees and has the rights to harvest the crop, whatever they produce?
Yep, it's a great question. In general, a lot of the trees have been planted on smallholder farmers' lands, so they own the trees. But there are large swaths like that forest I showed you that is basically considered a municipal property that it's owned by the town. And so that's where the convening of town government comes into play. And the initiative, when we plant on essentially public properties in large swaths, the idea is the government will engage the citizenry to protect the trees. And typically, it depends on the species. They may not be harvestable trees. They might just be suitable for shade and bringing back the biodiversity. And the whole idea there is then we can introduce the proposition of responsible cutting. And then we're not eliminating the opportunity to have a charcoal market, but we're creating the opportunity to have a responsible, sustainable charcoal market, if that makes sense. So that's kind of in a short, general answer how that works. Sure. Any other questions?
The impact on other wildlife around and increase the viability for animals across the board when trees are introduced to the landscape.
Yeah, so what we learned in working with Trees for the Future, it's one of the first things we learned. They said if you do this and you do it the right way, once we had solidified our model, they said you're going to see the return, the restoration of an amazing biodiversity, and that is in fact what we've seen. I can't give you specific data on that, but we do know, and it does create other issues for farmers, but that's where a lot of the time where the trees becoming living fences really come into play. But from what I understand, one of the things that really leads to the productivity of the trees and the health of the soil is actually the return of a lot of birds that had disappeared. And that all kinds of species of birds. So it's pretty cool. I mean, it's just nature, it's like, it's what we learned when we were kids and somehow we forgot along the way as capitalists. And so it's pretty cool to be able to pull those things back together in a responsible way. Yes?
Compliments, Margaret. I thought later we were going to have 3 TED Talks, but now we already have 10.
Thank you.
It's a great story. And it's good that people tell stories because that's what really inspires people. So thank you very much. You did a very special thing, I think, starting with a drive to do something for the local community where you were producing. Totally, let's say, disconnected from your own value chains and then brought it home in the end.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at our community, small and large, would you recommend yes, start with that community, or maybe look a little bit closer to home to start from?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's so many different pathways to entry. And so for us, because it started out as a marketing proposition, it didn't need to connect directly to our business as a manufacturer of goods. Because there's no shortage of brands out there that have a cause-related connection to organizations that don't really have anything to do with the products they make. Maybe they have a specific product that connects it. You think of the whole breast cancer fundraising mechanism around pink. But so for us, from a marketing perspective, it wasn't a huge endeavor. It wasn't a huge thing for us to try to make that connection. But when we got involved into kind of the guts of the project on the ground, and we saw that there were markets to be had, again, as capitalists, we started to think, well, wow, how can we transition from a funder of the project to a customer for these farmers? I mean, that's ultimately what we want. And so that's when we got our supply chain involved. And so I think it all depends on where you are and what stages of your organization and what resources that you have available. Regardless, the most important thing to do in my mind is you've got to take the long view. This stuff can't happen overnight, but it can happen more quickly if you collaborate with each other. And that's the critical piece. We can't be so, if we really want to move the needle and we truly are committed to being more sustainable businesses, we've got to agree to work together, even if we sell competing products. And I know, like, again, you're going to go back to work on Monday and somebody's going to go into PetSmart meeting with the buyer and you're going to try to capture somebody whose shelf space is sitting in this room. And that's the game we play. But ultimately, we all have our share. And sometimes it's up and sometimes it's down, but as long as we can just kind of see the bigger picture and the longer view, and we can change the paradigm, whether it's packaging or sourcing of materials, or even just engaging your employee base in a different mindset of how they approach processes. That's a big thing for us. We have new manufacturing processes that reduce energy, that save cost of the factory, that reduce our costs. So it just all depends. There's so many points of entry, but ultimately you want to get to where it impacts directly your business, without a doubt. But you got to start somewhere. So I think the key is just imagine what's possible and think big. I mean, people think, I don't know, Kamel maybe never thought I was crazy, but I always used to think, like, people, do they even care what I have to say because they think I'm a dreamer? But, and this isn't to toot my own horn, it's just the point is I was empowered by Jeff Swartz to think big. And God, if you get the opportunity to meet somebody like Jeff Swartz and he tells you to think big, I mean, he basically said, we want to plant trees in Haiti. And I said, well, I don't think we should do it the way we've always done it. We've been planting trees for 10 years in China, writing checks. And when those checks stops, then the trees are going to die because nobody's committed to taking care of them. And he said, you know what? That's a great idea. That's an interesting thought. Go figure it out. I was like, holy shit, what have I done? But that's a cool challenge to have. And so that's my point about empowering people. I mean, I'm actually in a new role at Timberland, or VF Corp, where I'm the director of marketing and licensing for Kodiak Group Holdings. It's a brand, a company that was acquired through VF's acquisition of Dickies a year ago. And I was asked to come on board and run these brands from a marketing and licensing perspective. And culturally, the hardest thing for us right now is to it's a Canadian-based company, and get these people out of their mindset of the culture, that they're empowered. They were in a culture where they were in their own lane. They were told, this is your job, and you stay in your lane, and you do it unless we tell you otherwise. And it has taken us 8 months to get them to just lift their head off the desk to think that it's okay to ask questions and offer up ideas. And so that's, to me, one of the biggest challenges, especially in this space. Because at the end of the day, it's not always the top of mind priority in our day-to-day business operations until you get to that tipping point where it becomes a true part of your culture in a holistic way, like it has at Timberland and at VF. So hopefully that answers your question.
For years, it seemed like Haiti's been their own worst enemy. Could you talk a little bit about how this has any impact on the political stability or instability in the communities or the regions of the country as a whole?
Sure, that's a great question. So, I did say that if you want to convene the four parties, government, local citizens, NGOs, and private sector, those are the four people you need involved to build a strong, sustainable project that can be scalable. We actually didn't invite government to get involved in our agroforestry project until we knew it was successful. Because of the climate in Haiti, and there's a huge culture of bribery. I mean, we had government officials, when they learned of what we were doing, they would show up at the gates of the nurseries and ask the farmers for money. And the farmers were trained to say no and tell them to go away. In the past, they probably would have given them. We said, don't worry, they'll go away, and they did. And so that was a strategic play on our part. And the other thing was the mantra of, it's amazing how much can be accomplished when nobody cares who gets the credit. So when we started to be successful, and then we invited the Ministry of Agriculture, which had by then reestablished itself as a legitimate arm of the government, to come in and participate with us. They put out announcements like this, look at this great thing that we did. And, fine, knock yourself out. I mean, it's not going to stop us from being successful. And at the end of the day, we need their help because we need to get the goods out of the country. And in some cases, we need to get machinery into the country to process, especially the cotton. So, Haiti, I hate to hear this phrase, quite frankly, Haiti's his own worst enemy, because a lot of what's happened to Haiti isn't Haiti's fault. Without getting in a huge political discussion, and so they just want the same things we want. They want better lives, and they want to be at peace and have freedom and the ability to do the things they want to do and have access to the tools and training they need. And so that's what we're trying to give them. And we've seen a lot of change. I mean, it's not perfect, but I can tell you one of the things we have seen is people moving back out of the cities back into the rural communities to start working on farms again. And so we have a labor shortage in this country with regards to blue-collar jobs. And Haiti had a similar situation with agriculture, and now they're starting to see the paradigm shift. And that's a pretty exciting proposition.
Hi.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. I know you said it's a big part of the culture at Timberland, but did you ever run up against somebody who said, no, I don't think we can do that, or no, we don't want to spend money on that, or no, it's not a priority? And how did you navigate that to create this great thing you created?
Yes, I've run up against those people. We had a marketing leader who had a propensity to do that until he finally saw the light. But, and after I go back to my office or my desk and mumble under my breath and complain and realize that's not a productive way to act, you just try to get your advocates on board, and make the business case. And that's what we did to be able to get the organization to sign up for phase 2 in this cotton production thing. We actually we spent 6 months on producing a business case to present to VF Corporation to show them to show the supply chain leaders why this was a viable proposition and this could really amp up the corporation. It would be good for the stock. And so I've always just tried to plug away on the side, and then when you build a pocket of success or a story, you can create the narrative, in an authentic way that shows why it's something that we might want to revisit. And so we used to say, when we finished the first project and we did the documentary, people would say, what's the next Haiti? And I always think, well, how about what's next in Haiti? Like, why do we have to move on? Why do we have to have a new story every season? I mean, we talked about this all the time. Why can't we, consumers don't remember anything about what we're doing because we're not doing it long enough for them to have it cemented in their lives. So Bill Clinton told us, pick one thing and stick with it. You can do all the other things you're doing, but pick one thing to inform and inspire and engage the consumer around. And that's why we picked tree planting. And that's where it led us. So.
One last question.
I'm curious within Timberland, how you structure your sustainability efforts within the company. Do you have green teams or you've talked about the volunteering, how does that, how you organized and how do you plan what's going to be done by the volunteers?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So we have a corporate social responsibility team, and there's somebody that manages our community engagement. And so that's that pillar where we serve our communities. And she oversees a global team of community stewards. So every Timberland office and facility around the world has at least one community steward who is responsible for cascading down the information on community engagement and stewardship, and sharing the information around responsible product and protecting the outdoor initiatives that we have. So that's how we engage our global community in the idea of serving in the community. And they're also those global stewards at each of those facilities is responsible for organizing the community engagement volunteer projects and their venues. And they enlist the services of their fellow employees, obviously. So they create their own little committees, project teams. And then we have somebody who's in charge of environmental initiatives, and that's product-based initiatives. And so that's a pillar, so it's responsible products. So he works directly with our product team, our supply team, our materials team, our supply chain team, our materials team, and they set the priorities and the roadmap, the strategic roadmap for how we're going to address our goals and achieve our goals to use more renewable, organic, and natural materials in our products, recycled materials. And then the third part is workplace. And it's more social compliance and factory compliance and making sure that our factories are operating to the VF Code of Standards and the Timberland Code of Conduct Standards. And that's the third. Protection of the outdoors, that pillar, that's overarching. But on our CSR team, there's one person that is in charge of all the factory compliance stuff. They all report up into human resources. With dotted lines to a couple different leaders, supply chain, product, and we have somebody who's kind of a de facto marketing, who's the liaison between global brand marketing and CSR as well on that team. So this 5-member team that sits in New Hampshire in our headquarters. And then we have sustainability leaders in Europe and Asia and South America. So yeah.
All right.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.